Welcome to the Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee. I'm Chairman Joe Buscaino, joined by my colleague, Councilmember Paul Krikorian. Today is Tuesday, September 5th. We have a few agenda items you'd like to hear. First call on general public comment. Anyone here to speak on general public comment? Items not on the agenda?
No cards submitted, sir.
Let us close general public comment. Mr. Krikorian, if we can direct you to the agenda here. I'd like to take on consent, unless you want to pull any of these, items 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, without objection, we'll approve items 5, 6, 7, 8, and send that to council. With that, let me call item number 1. If you can read that into the record, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
John White, City Clerk. Item 1, Executive Director of Harbor Department to report relative to the status of department activities, including operations, finances, capital improvement projects, public safety and security, planning, technology, and marketing promotions pursuant to motion Buscaino-Bonin.
Thank you, John. Mr. Soroka, thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Again, in your time and leading America's Port, done incredible work alongside your commissioners. I do want to welcome Ambassador Vilma Martinez, Commissioner, and Commissioner David Arian for joining us here today. Under all your leadership, we've had incredible record-breaking numbers at the Port of Los Angeles. We see the community I'm not going to give you a presentation, but
keep going.
The community investment that's coming in, it's alive and well, it's visible. At the same time, as we're seeing a record year in the movement of cargo, we're seeing a reduction in emissions as well, by double digits. But I'll turn over to you. We are welcomed joined by Councilmember Mike Bonin.
You're welcome by me.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, Mike. So with that, the floor is yours, and tell us all the great things happening in the port.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. And just to begin, a little bit of scope of work. Part of what we designed when I first came in a little more than 3 years ago was to build on the great vision that had been created before us with a mission statement and then a four-pronged approach on our overall strategy at the Port of Los Angeles, and that to build up the world-class infrastructure that's necessary to carry our resolve around being not only the nation's largest container port by volume, but the largest in the Western Hemisphere. The cargo and passengers that traverse the Port of Los Angeles touch each and every of our 435 congressional districts in the nation. In addition, are tangibly represented by the creation of more than 1 in 9 jobs in the 5-county Southern California area. So whether it be administrators like myself, the folks that work on the docks, the folks that import and export, among other adjacent industries, that's the strength of what this port brings and the economic importance that it shares, not only here locally and regionally, but nationwide. The second approach is around building a sustainable and secure supply chain. And all of that work that had come before us with respect to Clean Air Action Plan, Clean Truck Program, as well as the conveyance process of the supply chain are encompassed within. In addition, our strong financial resolve. You may recall, Mr. Chairman, when I took over this position, we had a negative cash flow of $188 million on an annual basis. That has not only been stopped, but we are now in the positive. And that is very important for all of us so we can not only pay down our responsibilities on long-term debt, but look towards investment into the future. And lastly, our strategic objective around the partnerships with other stakeholders. And as you rightly mentioned, not only industry, but our community members and our environmental stewards, among many other stakeholder groups that we have, elected and appointed at the federal, state, and county level, as well as here in the municipality. Our business is split up into 3 main areas of focus. And that is the cargo, which really drives all of the revenue at the Harbor Department in Los Angeles, our work with the Harbor Enclave communities of Wilmington, Harbor City, Harbor Gateway, and San Pedro, among many others who have an interest in the port, and our environmental update. From the cargo side, closing our fiscal year June 30th, we moved 9.2 million container units, which, as previously stated, was the most ever in the history of a port based in the Western Hemisphere. That eclipsed our calendar year last year of more than 8.8 million TEUs, and for a calendar year here in 17, of which most industry observers follow, will also set record volumes during that time span. Now, that all comes in an industry which is facing severe financial pressures, one that has seen consolidation of its major corporations from 22 down to 13 liner shipping companies, compression of rates at the retail and port level, and additional juxtaposing of supply chain stakeholders and their financial responsibilities across all decks in the area of the Trans-Pacific and all East-West trades. You may even recall, on top of mergers and acquisitions, the unfortunate exit of Hanjin Shipping Corporation out of Seoul, South Korea, which really turned the industry on its ear for a time period last September and October. But nonetheless, we strive forward with really growing our marketplace, and that market share is greater than it was predating the depths of congestion that we witnessed in the wintertime of 2014 and 15 that was signified most commonly with a protracted longshore labor agreement, new and unique partnerships and alliances with liner shipping companies, as well as other dislocations in the supply chain. So cargo that may have found its way to the east and Gulf coasts, to Canada and Mexico, has not only come back to the Port of Los Angeles, but we have grown that business over time as well. Some other areas that are happening quite unique to the Port of LA, we will be bringing in front of this committee and full council in a couple of weeks, hopefully, if schedules permit, a new partnership with General Electric Transportation that will digitize all aspects of the supply chain. I can tell you from my 12 years overseas, the work I've done at the federal level and in this job today, there is no other port complex in the world that is moving the advancement of technology in blue tech, specifically the way we are today. GE is aggregating all of the unique data points that exist in the supply chain universe into one common portal. And at first, while we'll use this as a visibility and predictability tool, there will be predictive and prescriptive analytics, along with opportunities to bolt on applications to a $1 billion cloud-based operating platform that GE brings along with it called Predix. And those bolt-ons can be anything from a universal truck appointment system, to the ability to manage imports and exports outside of port property, as well as many other applications. In our work so far, and I just came back from a week-long trip in Europe on top of 2 weeks in Asia last month, and I can tell you people are extremely excited. Even our competitors are looking to get in on the action here. That will be coming before you in the coming weeks. Second, from an infrastructure standpoint, our signature project will be the Harbor Performance Enhancement Center. A parcel of property that's 80 acres in the middle of Terminal Island that had laid dormant for more than 11 years. You may remember, Chairman, this was a former coal facility. And as we shifted our work outside of fossil fuels and following the direction of the legislators, we have now moved to repurpose that land to keep up with the advent change of our industry. This particular parcel will increase the port's capacity by between 10 and 30% when fully operable. We'll be going through the necessary CEQA process, but more importantly, we're going to be bringing before our board on this Thursday, September 7th, a proposition to begin a pilot project of testing in order to earn the confidence of retailers, agricultural sector, and manufacturers across the country to see how this particular facility can be used to vacate container terminals cargo, move more swiftly, and allow truckers to pick up their containers ready for movement across our streets and freeways at off-peak hours within about 15 or 20 minutes. So the truckers who continue to sit in line for many, many hours on end, awaiting to pick up that one container inside very congested terminals that are much larger than this facility, we found a way through secondary conveyance principles to give these truckers an added advantage of additional turns. The less touches to a container mean less airborne emissions, and if we can find ways to stow the ships properly, vacate these containers as swiftly as possible to the secondary conveyance yard, you'll have less emissions that go airborne through some of these efficiency ideas that we have put in place. That will be coming to you at a later date as well for approval, but very excited about rejuvenating property that had not been in production for some time. Second, our community update. When I first came on board, we talked a lot about what we could do better for our vast community and what engagement principles we needed to utilize. That, after many sessions of roundtable discussions, cups of coffee, and talking with folks, we came up with the nation's first infrastructure public access investment plan, which dictates that the Harbor Department offer for public access infrastructure planning purposes and deliveries 10% of our operating income, matched by in-kind dollars for operations and maintenance of these facilities, whether they be green spaces, waterfront access, or other infrastructure projects related to retail, dining, and entertainment. That commitment, based on annual budgeting process of the city and Board of Harbor Commission approval, estimates to be about $400 million in investment to our community over the next 10 years. Born from that is our ability to redevelop the waterfront. And in the efforts of redeveloping Ports of Call, Chairman, which is one of your signature projects, we had the ability last May to sign a long-term agreement with the Ratkovich Company and the Johnson Brothers, also known as Jericho Development, to redevelop Ports of Call, retail, dining, and entertainment venue along the waterfront. Still much more work to do from the developer side, but that was the beginning of that rejuvenation. Just recently, we brought before you at the last committee meeting, I believe, and then full council, was an updated contract with Altasea, a long-term agreement which will allow them to go out to their investors and designees to bring urban marine research directly to our waterfront in Los Angeles. And those are just two parts. We're in the design stage right now of 900 linear feet of Wilmington waterfront activity and extending our park area down all the way to the water and creating more public access and more venues for the folks in our Wilmington area. So very encouraged by the work that we've done, but now these private-public sector engagements that we've designed and these partnerships have really got to be led by the developers. You see the transformation happening in San Pedro today with the realignment of Harbor Boulevard and some of the other work that's been done on the ground to help start with a clean slate at Ports of Call so new development and new structures can be built. But we need those developers really to step up and bring more private sector interest and investment to our waterfront. We just completed our second annual Fleet Week, and the estimates that have come in from Chief Gazy and Los Angeles Port Police are that we entertained between 160 and 180,000 visitors over the long Labor Day weekend, with folks enjoying themselves with family and friends at our restaurants, our shops, and our other local businesses. Which means that on top of one of our near record-setting years in waterfront visitors, more than 341,000 visitors came to the waterfront last fiscal year, only topped by fiscal 2013 and 14, where we saw 400,000 visitors. We are in a continuous clip bringing more and more folks down to enjoy our waterfront and shoreline. And those, through programmatic activities and other venues, will continue to really drive the activity that's taking place now as we redevelop on the infrastructure side. Very encouraged by all this work. And lastly, our environmental update. Three particular areas here that are of importance to the committee and I'm sure full council. The China Shipping Supplemental EIR, which is work that I had advised the previous committee or the predecessor to TTT on several occasions, and that is reworking an environmental impact report that takes into account modernized technology and other mitigation measures that were previously prescribed for the China Shipping West Basin project at the Port of Los Angeles. And albeit that air emissions inventories were at or below all those that were committed in the previous EIR and to our community, there were several mitigation measures that were not implemented or completed. The supplemental environmental work is geared directly to those mitigation measures to ensure that we meet and exceed all CEQA requirements and those that govern our environmental stewardship aspects. Secondly, our Clean Air Action Plan. We are looking towards the month of November for our second and most recent joint Board of Harbor Commissioners meeting between the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles to adopt policy on the third iteration of our Clean Air Action Plan. That Clean Air Action Plan is meant to drive emissions levels even lower than they have to date over the last 11 years and the first two iterations, along with bringing about a second phase of a clean truck program. That work is around the graphical depiction that you see before you on the air emissions inventory reductions. And as you aptly stated, Chairman, year over year with our 2016 air emissions inventories, we not only grew the port's business by nearly 10%, but we reduced diesel particulate matter, nitrogen oxide, and sulfur oxide by double digits. And the all-important greenhouse gas component was reduced by 28%, again, while growing our business. We also know that there is much more work to do in all these areas, and we don't profess any type of success other than continuous improvement. And that is why in September of 2015, along with the previous general manager at the Port of Long Beach, we called for this next step in clean air action planning. I'd like to get to it faster and move things along much quicker, but I do realize that this is a very public process that requires input from all stakeholders across a variety of disciplines. And that is why we have just come off a 4-hour public meeting last week where we heard from more than 100 speakers. This was the 51st public meeting that we have held in conjunction with the Port of Long Beach on what our next steps in Clean Air Action Plan will be. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions or commentary.
Thank you, Mr. Soroka. Again, it goes to show why you are America's Port Director and leading with incredible leadership and commitment. This Port of Los Angeles, as we know, is an amazing economic driver for this region, for our country, and we're just so blessed to have you leading our port, and want to commend Mayor Garcetti for bringing you on board.
And I feel the same way. I think it's the greatest job in the world.
Thank you. And speaking of Mayor Garcetti, we stood in Middle Harbor not too long ago about pushing for a zero-emission port by 2035. Tell us what steps the port is taking in reaching that goal, and some of the challenges that may be presented in reaching that goal as well.
Yeah, specifically, Chairman, the mayors of Long Beach and Los Angeles announced in June that their targets were to see zero emissions technology inside the fences of our port terminal operations by the year 2030, and zero emissions heavy duty truck usage in and around the port complex by the year 2035. While these technologies don't necessarily exist today, we have spent countless time, and will continue to do so, with those original equipment manufacturers and tiered suppliers to show what I have been terming as a market maker concept, and the ability to give these well-capitalized companies confidence that they will have customers here, not only in Southern California, but maybe the state and possibly the entire West Coast. Mayor Garcetti has initiated dialogue with the other West Coast mayors to see if we could possibly put out a request for information as a group of West Coast cities to see what attraction we could make from port cities along our coast to these larger companies and those that may be small or just developing, and find ways where we can not only make these particular products available to us, but in mass quantities at competitive prices, so we can get to the business of cleaning our air even greater than we have done so far, but making this equipment, whether it be a forklift or a top loader to move containers around, or a truck that will deliver and pick up from our customers' businesses quicker than some may anticipate. It is a huge lift and an aspiration that goes to great lengths, but with some of our business interests and the people that we've known from the industry for some time, we are getting those meetings, and we are talking to folks and trying to put together ideas on how that technology could be advanced quicker than maybe some would have thought before.
Appreciate that response. Just yesterday was Labor Day. We were able to, our host, Chris Martinez, a dear friend of the family, he's a crane operator, and made it clear to him I value his work. I turned to his 10-year-old daughter, Trinity, and shared with Trinity how important Chris' job is day in and day out, moving our goods to ensure that those goods end up in Target and other parts of the country. And she was like, wow, I didn't know that, Dad. But if you look at what took place here in the last couple of months with the extension of the labor contract, tell us how important that is moving forward in the next few years.
Yeah, it really can't be understated. I think if I can recall, we go back to the month of January in 2015, where Mayor Garcetti and I went up to San Francisco to help work with both sides, our longshore brothers and sisters, as well as the employers. And we were joined by then United States Secretary of Labor Tom Perez and former U.S. Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker, who combined within 7 days got us to a tentative agreement and the original talks about a potential contract extension. Now, the ILW, the Longshore Group, is a very democratic membership and go through very, very much grassroots processes when it comes to policy. And after some time and a lot of work from many angles, we were able to get to a point where the union ratified a 3-year contract extension. So in the minds of industry and other observers that will invest here, not only on the West Coast but in Los Angeles, having 5 more years of labor peace with longshoreman employers, something that had not been seen before, will be a boon for all of us.
Said. And then lastly, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues, you made mention in one of your slides of being a community partner, a world-class, not only a world-class a port, but also a world-class neighbor. And the amazing turnaround we've seen with the infrastructure projects of the realignment of Sampson Way and Harbor into the new development. Aside from, and then also the progress being made on the Wilmington side, on the Wilmington waterfront, I believe we're very close on finalizing the Wilmington design phase. Tell us, outside of those 2 projects, what's the port doing to continue to promote commercial development along the waterline?
Yeah, well, I think it really starts with the efforts that we made originally. It's working with not only you and your office, but the neighborhood councils, other community and group leaders in our harbor enclave. Part of what we did with the community access investment plan was to get the ideas, categorization, and prioritization from community members. What projects would you like? How important are they to you? And what would you like us to do first off? And I think that simple postulate holds true today. With the neighborhood councils, they're looking for new projects, new work. With the developers, it's what could be possible for tomorrow. Additional parcels, but also filling out what has been prioritized today. And again, I think that ongoing dialogue, and it's not just me. It starts with the Board of Harbor Commissioners, who really set the pace. And some discussions we had on our last Asia trade mission to really get the funding in place for how infrastructure was to look on our LA waterfront. And it's a culmination of those ongoing discussions and collaboration that really will continue to drive this. But I again will underscore the importance of the private sector developer community to really get leaseholders involved and to get private sector business to invest along with us and match our money times many.
Yep.
In order to develop the way all of us see the future being.
Well, let me say thank you for allowing us to put skepticism in the rearview mirror, and we're seeing the progress being made. We're seeing the shovels in the ground. We're seeing dirt being moved, and moving. And in the Wilmington side, the ULI TAP study was just concluding on. We've always said when you're seeing that progress being made on the waterfront, investment will come. Into our city, and with housing in place and Alta-C diversifying the workforce, it's just been an amazing ride, and to be able to see the progress being made. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you to our commissioners who are here as well. And I know we're going to hear from Chief Gazy. We have an incredible maritime public safety organization, the best maritime cops in this entire country. So I know as much as we want to keep our port safe, which we'll hear in closed session, I do want to recognize the men and women who are protecting our port assets as well. So with that, colleagues, any questions, comments for our port director? Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Soroka. I always appreciate hearing your updates. It's really gratifying to see how far we've come in the port's relationship with the community, certainly in the development of the waterfront, but also the main work of the port in the record-breaking year that you're having again. And it's great news for the regional economy of Southern California, to be sure. But on that point, I wonder if you could share with us a little bit more of your thoughts about long-term strategic challenges and opportunities that the port has, given the United States withdrawal from the TPP, given the rising middle class in China, which could potentially be a threat to imports, but also present an opportunity for exports from the United States there. We're very Asia dependent, yes, thank you, in the port, and obviously the economy of China is going to have a direct impact on the port, and also the competition with our West Coast competitors and the result of the Panama Canal. So if you can, I mean, I know that's a lot to ask, but maybe just some broad strokes, long-term thinking that you have about where we stand with the future.
Of concern always is what is going to happen with respect to our international relations revolving around trade. And that's something that we've been working diligently on within the 4 committees that I sit on in Washington. They were originally designed to be bipartisan in nature and to move through administrations. So the work that we're continuing to do was part of the original charter. And again, that's with the Department of Transportation, Department of Commerce, and the Federal Maritime Commission. To say that I'm a little bit uneasy about the rhetoric that has been taking place over the last number of months would be an understatement. 60% of our nation's imports come from the People's Republic of China. We rely heavily on them. For those of us who shop at big box retailers and other retailers of all sizes, the impression there is indelible. The work that we continue to do around fostering that trade, I think, is omnipresent in our everyday activities. My visits on a regular basis to Asia and to Europe most recently, and my time and network that had been created with nearly 12 years of work overseas in the private sector. Anything can turn on a dime. And when folks start talking about cutting off people who trade with certain countries, that makes you worry tremendously. Again, the importation of goods is not necessarily just a focal point on jobs, but it is jobs creation, in my view, as evidenced by the 1 in 9 that we so proudly tout. On the export side of the business, the opportunities to work around manufactured goods, consumer goods, technological, as well as agricultural are all in our line of sight. You and I have had this conversation before, Councilman, that our largest export commodity from the United States to Asia is waste paper, and that corrugated paperboard is used to make the boxes of the finished goods that we have to switch back in. But identity-preserved agricultural products, heavy machinery for cultivation of agriculture and manufacturing sectors overseas, as well as trying to get to those middle economy-based folks, more than 300 million in each, China and India, presents us with huge opportunities. So that campaign has got to continue, and every influence we have on potentially bilateral trade agreements or more robust trade agreements with partners in Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East are of great importance to us. The threats are abound. No one port can take our cargo overnight. But what we have seen from history and during my short tenure is that when you start having 3, 4, 5 smaller ports gather up on you and start nipping at your heels, that's real competition. And that's what we face every day. I think we've proven it short term by not only regaining our share but growing that, yet there's still much more work to do. The Panama Canal by design is a 75-year infrastructure project. It was not meant to take cargo away from other ports the immediate days upon opening its third lock, but it is real. They're able to take larger ships, albeit not the largest in the trade, at more economical pricing and connect more origin and destination pairs than ever before. We keep very close tabs, and in fact, I'm quite friendly with folks in Panama after having done business with them in the past. But realistically speaking, if we maintain our competitive edge, which is even led by the governor's executive order of driving efficiencies, maintaining competitiveness, and growing it, while migrating to zero and near zero emissions capabilities, I think we'll stay ahead of the game. But it takes that around-the-clock work to stay at that competitive peak.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate the presentation. Here, I'm flanked by 2 colleagues who value our port complex, and I know Mr. Krikorian spends a great deal of time at our Cabrillo Aquarium and the Battleship Iowa with his family, and Mr. Bonin here, San Pedro, is his second home. Commissioner Arian reminds me that I'm his second favorite council member. Yeah. Well, Dave, you're my second favorite commissioner. For the record. I love you. So with that, really appreciate the presentation and the relationship that we've had over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. So again, appreciate your leadership and commitment. We're also here by General Counsel Janice Sidley for thank you for your direction as well and commitment in protecting our assets. So with that, we will continue this item. It will be a recurring verbal presentation that we'll have all directors or general managers of the 3 departments that we oversee in this committee. So we'll keep this and continue this item. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Soroka. Okay, so with that, we're going to hold item 2, and that's a closed session discussion. We'll hold that for the last item. Let's take together, if we can, items 3 and 4. If you can read those 2 items into the record. I'm sorry, we don't have no speaker cards on item 1, correct?
None.
Okay, fantastic. So
Item
we'll take
three.
item 3.
Communication from
3
the
and
Board-
4 together.
Board of Airport Commissioners and CO report relative to a lease with Southwest Airlines Company covering 65,000 to 95,000 square feet of land between Terminals 1 and 2 at LAX, and general exemption from the California Environmental Quality Act as provided in Article 2, Section 2I of the LA City Secret Guidelines. Item 4, communication from the Board of Airport Commissioners and CO report relative to the Second Amendment to lease LAA 8757 with Southwest Airlines Company covering additional operation space at LAX and categorically exemption from CEQA as provided in Article 3, Class 1, 18C of the LA City Secret Guidelines.
Great, 2 important items here before us. Southwest has been an incredible partner of this entire city and, of course, the airport in expanding the terminal and even looking at Concourse Zero. Love to see that move. I know we've had a variety of community support at all levels, but we're here to talk about T1.5, correct?
Yeah.
Let me defer it over to Mr. Bonin, who kick it off to you for some opening comments.
Thanks, Mr. Buscaino. You really, you pretty much nailed it right there. I mean, we have, you said a world-class port and a world-class neighbor. It's the mantra at LAX has been world-class airport, first-class neighbor. And this is an example of sort of the new era at LAX, where the community is fully behind and our neighbors are fully behind all the modernization projects that are happening at that airport, including, as you said, the coming Concourse Zero, which I'm very excited about and the community is down for as well. Southwest has been one of our best partners at the airport, but the passenger experience at Southwest is, it can be somewhat lacking sometimes. Not the fault of the airline, but the fault of the infrastructure there. You get totally jammed up when you try to come into the airport, and then folks get shuttled off to halfway across the universe to get to their flights. Talk about how this is going to get us to start to fix that.
Sure. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Dave Jones. I'm here for W Powers today. I'm the Director of Aviation Properties and Concessions at LAX. So this item we're very excited about. As you mentioned, Southwest is currently in the midst of a really nice renovation of Terminal 1, but they're not done yet, and that's been adding a lot of stress to the passenger experience in that. But when that's building done, it's going to be fantastic, much more better customer experience all the way around that facility, including the new checkpoint, which I think helps. You know, the first thing people see was always that crowded, congested checkpoint. So with Southwest plans, their growth, their international traffic, when they were operating their international traffic out of T2, made a little bit of sense. Okay, you know, fairly close proximity, but with the recent relocation from Delta into Terminal 2, that displaced the Southwest flights all the way to Tibbet, which I think is your reference to people being bussed halfway across the universe. So with what we came up with Southwest help, and this is another example of a great
And
partnership.
just because somebody needs to pick it up, the ghost of Tom LaBonge reminds me, it's not Tibbet, it's Tom Bradley International Terminal.
Tom Bradley International.
Forever in our thoughts and minds on our shoulder.
I can't
right?
hear it without my...
So the ability to partner with Southwest yet again on this really became clear to us when we realized if you were going to place a new head house building, which we call Terminal 1.5, right next to where Southwest was doing its construction, it really begged, hey, why don't we work together to make this work, mitigate the risk instead of having two construction companies in the same sandbox. So this really started to make a lot of sense. And what we ended up with was the concept for a brand new head house, about 190,000 square feet of additional check-in space, additional passenger screening, additional bag screening, as well as a fully functional bus gate, something we don't have in Terminal 1. And so this will provide the opportunity for passengers who are checking in on Southwest for international to proceed straight down to a bus gate that would take them airfield into the new midfield satellite concourse, which is the extension of Tom Bradley International Terminal. As part of this structure, too, there will also be additional check-in capacity that we can use to help offset some of the problems we're having in Bradley with the same thing where you have too many passengers trying to get through in too close of an area. So to be able to spread that out and create a much better functioning airport for the passenger experience as well as for the airlines.
So, well, it feels like we're playing musical chairs there with everybody moving around. We're actually adding more chairs as the moving is happening.
Correct. We're creating more space in order to create a better check-in experience and passenger processing experience, exactly.
Which I presume also has security benefits as well, getting
Yes.
people through quicker.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You don't want to have, a lot of people queuing up, obviously. You want to be able to keep that a more steady flow.
And when do we anticipate this being done?
This is supposed to be done by 2024, but I think Southwest obviously wants to have that done much sooner. We have put some tight constraints, timelines on them to have parts of this done to tie into the automated people mover, which we're coming. So they are building that core, and they have to have that ready to hand over to the contractor by 2021. So this all fits into that plan to really create a much better passenger flow right there, what we call that first knuckle at the airport.
I've tried to keep a news blackout at the airport so that everybody in your unit still thinks the Olympics are 2024.
That's right.
They're not?
Nice. Thank you.
It's not final yet.
I know. Next week. CAO, want to chime in on 3 and 4?
CAO office,
Please.
and we have recommended, we have reviewed the report and recommend approval.
Thank you. Good. So with that said, without objection, we'll approve items 3 and 4. Appreciate the progress being made at the airport. Thank you very much. And thanks to our partners, Southwest Airlines, who are here as well. Okay, at this point, we'll now go to closed session to hear item number 2. Do you want to?
Item 2, Port Police Chief, Harbor Department to present verbal report relative to existing security protocols at the Port of Los Angeles and the August 16, 2017 incident in which the driver of a vehicle breached port security to escape police pursuit and subsequently climbed the tower crane and fell to his death.
Thank you. So here, closed session, I believe, we're going to have port staff. Yes, go ahead. You want to make the disclaimer?
Mike Dunn, City Attorney's Office. The committee may recess in a closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957A to discuss this matter.
Thank you very much.
Need 1 second.
Yep, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, you can just...
Okay, welcome back into open session. So with that, on this item, item number 2, we will continue this item and get another report back at a later date. Okay? Thank you so much. Appreciate your presence. Okay, other than that, it looks like that was a final agenda item.
Yes, sir.
And with that, we are now adjourned and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
See you, Mike.
That's good. Thanks, you saved me.